nobody, everybody's doing this type of shit, and nobody is really working at YouTube. So a lot of the stuff is taking forever to process. I know both shows last week. Our show did not get. It was not fully up on YouTube until Sunday morning, and I couldn't upload it to Anchor because I can't strip the audio until it's fully processed by YouTube. So I didn't get it up on Anchor until Sunday. And yeah, the 40 and Slip show, it's the same way. It's the following day because of the amount of traffic that they're seeing on YouTube and everywhere right now. It's crazy. It's crazy.
We've become a virtual world rather
crazy
than
world. It's crazy land.
Yeah. Yep.
Crazy. But yeah, I did not grab my sound pad like I normally do because I'm not with it today. Yeah, it's one of those days, Holly.
Lazy Saturday morning.
Pretty much. We were kind of taking our time getting into this, but we'll get right into it. Right into it. Hey, everybody. Slip into the Night. Episode 29. Spinning the Akashic Record hits. Me, you, Holly. A loofah sponge. Let's do it.
What are you proposing to do with that loofah sponge?
Yeah, you don't remember that whole thing with fucking Bill O'Reilly? With his was it Bill? No, it was fucking the other dude. It was Pat. Oh fuck. Me, you, Betsy.
I don't know that reference. Wow. Sounds like a little group fun there, though.
I can't remember the dude. Oh god, I can't remember. Pat something. Can't fucking remember. You, me, Betsy. He got fucking fired or fucking wound up having to pay like a shit ton of money. Oh, it was like a big scandal. Yeah, that's fun shit. The Akashic Record. I often wonder if people think of the Akashic Record like an actual library, which I wouldn't necessarily see it that way myself. I know it's been referenced in such ways before in books, like fictional books. Doesn't you've read some of the Butcher books, the Dresden books? He speaks to people that work like at the Akashic Records, right? Or something to that degree.
It's been a while since I read those books.
I gotcha. I'm pretty sure he does. Like, there's some records there, but and more importantly, and I think this is a question that all of our our listeners would like answered, is does the Akashic Record have a porn section?
Well,
I'm pretty sure it would.
I'm pretty sure it would as well.
Considering it would contain all knowledge.
That is what the kind of the concept of the Akashic Record is. The term Akasha is from a Sanskrit word that kind of means the ether,
spirit.
Right. So kind of the thought process there, and it has because I looked this up, it also has some similarities for a word about sound, the sound or vibration, because sound is vibration, and it is the kind of the imprint of all vibration that has ever been, ever was, and can it trail off into what can be, into the field of possibilities. So this is kind of a abstract, hard to conceptualize idea, define that this is what the Akasha is, and sometimes it's now referred to as the collective consciousness,
right?
And it's kind of like the every thought, every moment of consciousness that has ever been it still exists out there in kind of like the etheric energetic field, but it's hard for a like human mind to really wrap itself around that. So it's often kind of visualized as a library, and your particular contribution to this kind of almost like energetic internet, it's out there, but that your particular slice of that is your book of life, or your personal summation of your experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then for those who believe in reincarnation, it is that compilation of your reincarnations.
Right.
And then it's everyone's reincarnations in all those experiences, that it is both something that you can access from your own mind, but it also kind of is just out, it exists.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this very metaphysical thing, but it is kind of pertinent to our overall topics of kind of metaphysics and consciousness. And
yeah, and there are people who think that like the creative spark is somehow part of the Akashic record, like, because there are people who are artists, like people who write, or people who draw, people who compose, who they'll say like I just have a hand in it. Like, I don't know where it comes from. It just kind of flows through me. Artists say that a lot. Is very, very rarely you'll come across an artist that doesn't in some way relay something to that degree of, I'm kind of a vessel for what it is that is coming through me. Like, for some reason, a lot of them feel that way.
yeah, so it's kind of a form of creative channeling of
Right, and it's all it kind of stems from that same type of place, I would say.
yes, of this kind of like place of ideas and energy that you can access and kind of bring through yourself.
Yeah, it all kind of coalesces together, and
Mm-hmm.
people can pull from it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wonder how much of it is and how much of it, isn't. Sort of, kind of like, I think to degrees that, yeah, absolutely. There's imprinting of knowledge on the universe, I think, to a degree. My first introduction to the whole idea of it, though, is it's kind of funny. Is my father. I was looking at something. It was some new invention that I had seen, and he was like, "Yeah, no, that's not new." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, it's new." And he pulled out a fucking Popular Mechanics magazine from, like, I don't even know when. It was ancient. And he was like, "Look." I was like, "Oh, yeah." And he's like, "Chris, there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing. It's all been here." And just that statement, that one statement was kind of powerful. I mean, it made me realize that he was right. There is kind of nothing new under the sun. Like, this stuff may be new, but it's always been there. Like, anything that you see, any of this new technology, new medicine, new whatever, it's not new. It's just new because we put it together. It's always been there.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been right there. It's just we didn't have the know-how to put it together at that point in time. But it begs those questions of, what really is new? Is anything ever really new? Or is it just as old as fucking time itself? But that, in and of itself, that kind of makes sense when you look at it in terms of the Akashic Record. If all of these things always ever have been, then that type of a thing that is out there, that type of an energy that can be tapped into. That makes sense. And to me, it makes sense anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know about you, but to me, it does.
Yeah, I think it does make sense to me that there is kind of this energetic, because for me, everything starts in the energetic realm and then gets form and expression through how we interact with that energetic field. My first introduction to this kind of idea, though, was through the work of Edgar Cayce, who's like called the sleeping prophet, and he would say that he would go into kind of a trance, and then a hypnotic trance, a sleeping trance,
Mm-hmm.
and then would have someone ask him questions where he would come forth with this information that he would describe as coming from this kind of Akashic field. So he was having a much more direct interaction with it, where I think the more common experience of it is that we just get inspiration or ideas,
Right.
Pulling for it, where he was claiming that he was kind of, although he wasn't conscious when he was
I
in
think there are very
trances.
few people. I think if you look at the Akashic record like an ocean, or even like a pond, I'll even make it smaller. Look at the Akashic record like a pond. Okay, there are people who swim in it, and there are people who dip their toes in. There are people who are wade in a little bit. Like there's varying degrees to it. I think there are people who fucking immerse themselves in opening themselves up to these things. I think these are the people that you find that meditate regularly. They have good spiritual grounding in their life. Excuse me. Those are the people that they swim in this. That's their home. Then there are people that like wade in. They tiptoe in. Get up to about their fucking tummy, and they might dog paddle a little bit, but they're just still just fucking. They're tourists. And then you get the people who dip their toes in. Who just like every once in a while they might like all of a sudden get a nugget. By accident. But I do think it's something that is there, like that there's some form of all knowledge, because all these things that we quote unquote find is always just sitting there. Like we just didn't know enough to put this together with this, and then that became, that like when cavemen were around, the stuff to make a TV was there. They just couldn't make it.
Right. Or, for example, Albert Einstein would use a lot of what they call thought experiments to imagine how light worked, how the universe worked. And so he would imagine himself riding on a light wave, riding on a comet through space. What would happen and what would his experience be? And in a way, that is a form of accessing that kind of Akashic record knowledge, is using your mind to interact with the world around you in kind of this like energetic internet.
Yeah.
But so much of his science is first based on his thought experiments, and then he would express it in his mathematics.
Well, look at Tesla. Tesla could walk through his own engines in his own mind. Like he literally could walk you through it in his head without even ever having put anything down to paper. I mean, these are the types of human beings, I think, that swim in this, pool of knowledge. Well, like, I would say like you and I, we're Taurus. We kind of like, we go in every once in a while. We're Taurus. And then there are the people that they're accidental. You know, they dip their toes in, or maybe they were like looking for something and they're like, oh, but they're not like there.
Or it just kind of spontaneously happens for them and they just get this
Right.
brilliant idea and they just don't really give any thought to,
They
oh,
just go with it.
they just go with it and they bring that thought into our physical reality.
Yeah. And I mean, but I do think like your people, like your Teslas and your Einsteins, your Da Vinci's, you know, some of your great artists, you know, I think they swam in it. You know, they weren't tourists. Their brains worked in a different way when it came to that. And I don't know if that just means that they were more open to it. But I mean, Tesla even intimated that he received it from somewhere else. I think it's at one point in his life, he intimated that it came from somewhere else. That he just kind of tapped into it. But it's crazy shit. And I do, like I said, I do believe to some degree there is some truth to it. Like there is universal knowledge and universal truth. And I think that if you can tap into that, I think that can help you immensely in your thought process and in the way that you can put shit together. But you know, I've written stuff before and then like been like, wait a minute, where did that come from?
Right.
You
So
know?
I looked up a quote from Einstein. I have never come up with any of my discoveries through the process of rational thinking, Albert Einstein. So, you know, that's just kind of him just saying, you know, I'm playing in my mind and I'm coming this intuitively.
He was very abstract.
Yeah.
Very abstract. He had to have that creativity to see that shit. You know, who else but fucking Einstein could fucking see, you know, like the idea of you know, your motion, the speed at which you travel, and you know how time will differ for you, and like he figured all that shit out. Like he figured out like if you were orbiting in space, like you would age differently. Like he knew all that shit. He conceived it in his fucking head. Like stuff that you or I like, it would take us fucking forever to like read textbooks and be like, okay, now I get it. You know, Einstein was just like, yeah.
And I think
What's that spooky fucking, is that the spooky motion, like the spooky motion particle shit at a distance? He thought like all that weird shit that he thought of.
yeah. And a lot of it is he was actually allowing his mind to be playful. And one of the things that he contributed to his productivity was the fact that he would take a break and he would play music and he would just be playful with his mind. And it's kind of like a real contrast to kind of our modern day mode of operating, where we think that in order to be productive, we need to work an 8-hour day and take a 15-minute break where you just kind of sit and kind of chill out. And some people don't even get that. And not that the sit and chill out can't be bad, because you can just still your mind, and that actually may be very productive as well. As you can, you know, maybe that's going to allow you to receive or get clear of some information. But for Einstein and some of these other great like creative geniuses, even like the musical ones like Tchaikovsky and Beethoven, taking a walk, getting outside, breaking up that pattern of production was very important to their creative process, because you know, it seemed to help them access this kind of field of consciousness where they can get inspiration and excited about ideas, and then create something beautiful with it or innovative.
Yeah, I was excuse me. I was I've been watching some live streams of one of my favorite artists, Jim Lee. He does a lot of great comic book art. He works for DC currently, and he's been doing a lot of long form live streams, like 4-hour plus live streams of just drawing. And like he'll talk to people while he's doing it, you know, talk to the chat. But I was watching like how he would do it. You know, how he's drawing. You know, not because I'm like, you know, hey, I'm gonna learn to draw like Jim Lee. No, fuck that. I'm fucking nowhere near. Or wouldn't even try. But I'm watching him, you know, and he'd sit there and he'd friggin', you know, do a couple of little things on the paper, and then he'd sit back, look at it, just kind of sit there, and then he'd like answer some questions in the chat, and then he'd go back to it, and he, you know, or erase something and draw a line a little differently, and he'd sit back. Like, and I was just watching him do it, like just kind of watching like his process with this whole thing. And like seeing him, like as you're watching him, like as he's like, you know, as he's drawing it and as he's sitting there looking back at it, he's like, he's got this vision in his head, and you can kind of see that in his process, you know, what he's doing. And it's just interesting to me to watch people like that. You know, this guy who just does some of the most beautiful comic book artwork I have ever seen in my life. He like got me interested in comic books and comic book art again in a huge way with the Batman Hush series that he did. You know, and but watching him draw, you know, just that process, the way he'd sit back and just look at it, and he wouldn't just look at it from one angle. That was the weird thing to me, like, because it's just a flat piece of fucking paper to me, but he's like looking at it like this, and he's like over here, you know, and like I'm watching this process, and I'm just like, wow, he's on a different level than I am when it comes to that. You know, there are things that I do that probably I'm on a different level than him. But when it comes to artwork, he's on a different level. And he's in a different place. And it was very, very interesting to watch him do that. Just that process of he would work it, look at it. And he kept doing it. It wasn't like he would just sit there and just keep working. Do a little bit, he'd stop. He'd look at it. He might erase a line and then just draw like the little bit of the line. But then he'd just sit back. And just watching that, he's tapping into something. Like, you know, like there's a form, there's a way, there's, you know, a process to the art that he's learned. Don't get me wrong. There's that. But there's something else that he's tapping into that we can't see. And I think it is very akin to this thing that we're talking about. This universal energy of knowledge and creativity and, you know, whatever it may be.
And just like that idea of creative genius, and where do these very innovative minds pull from to start creating these interesting and new things that are often kind of based on other things, or they're following a thought further than anyone else has followed it. So they kind of get into a new place. Who's the name of the SpaceX guy? I can't think of his name right now.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. I think he's one of those people too, with his vision to, you know, do things.
I think he's got good vision. I don't know how much of it. Like I've often joked around and called him like the Iron Man of our age. Like, but in like watching Elon Musk, I don't know how much of him is hype man. You know what I mean? I think Steve Jobs was kind of a visionary. If you look at what's happened with Apple since he's gone, since he's left, it's like it doesn't have the same feel that it did when he was around. You know what I mean? That's the type of stuff. Like, he had a vision for Apple. If you ask me, like, you look at Steve Jobs, that's a guy that had vision. Elon Musk just likes to make cool shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna make a fucking flamethrower and sell it online.
But true, but he's really the only person maybe really thinking about going to Mars. And in that way, and thinking on how we get there.
Oh yeah, no, yeah,
Um,
he's definitely put some people to some groundbreaking shit.
but I'm not going to disagree with you with Steve Jobs. Certainly, like how Apple has transformed telecommunications and
Well,
with the
yeah, but I mean,
iPhone.
since he's been gone, though, how much they've gone down the tubes.
Yeah, I don't know.
In
I
my opinion, like
didn't.
the way Apple has gone forward since Steve Jobs has left the company and passed away, unfortunately. I don't see it in any way jiving with what was going on before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whereas before when Steve Jobs was there, it was innovation. Like he wanted innovation. And he's the guy that brought us the fucking mouse keyboard setup shit. Like that's Steve Jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's something everybody's got in their fucking house now. Pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Elon Musk, I don't know. And I do see him kind of in that way, but I see him more of like a cowboy.
Sure.
More like a cowboy than a
Yeah.
visionary.
Uh-huh.
He might have some visionaries working for him. I could say that. But I don't know if he's as much of the visionary. Because like I said, I've made that joke that he's like the Tony Stark, the Iron Man of our day. Which would be fucking hilarious. If he showed up in a fucking goddamn Iron Man suit and just flew down one day, I would shit my pants. Like I'd be like, fucking A. Yeah, son of a bitch did it. You crazy son of a bitch, you did it. I mean, but like I do think like I said, there are people that are there. They're in it. And then there are people that aren't.
And we're talking just now more about technology innovation, but I think sometimes you have high performance athletes. They talk about being in the
Oh
zone.
yeah, absolutely. It runs the gamut.
Yeah, and I think that is another manifestation of just kind of tapping into this, like, greater consciousness, is that they just kind of get in the zone, and then all of a sudden they are just like,
They let go.
They let go, and they are like performing, and they're playing in their game, and they are just like, on the mark. And they do a lot of studies on, and part of the training of some of these high performance athletes is visualizing their moves.
You
You
want to see somebody that fucking let go when he performed, and say what you will about him. Like I know people have said some like that he's some negative shit about him since he's retired from basketball, but Michael Jordan, back when I was watching sports, fucking Michael Jordan was a thing of fucking beauty. Like the shit that he did on a basketball court was amazing. Now, watch him while he did it. That son of a bitch had his fucking huge ass tongue hanging out of his mouth every fucking direction, up, down, sideways. Anytime he was fucking doing that shit, you knew he was in it. He just fucking let go. He didn't give a fuck. He didn't care what he looked like. All he cared about was that fucking game. That moment. He was in it. Say what you will about the man. That he was in it. That was fucking zen to him. When he was there, magic fucking happened. I don't think I've ever seen anybody fucking stop in air since Jordan. It may have been just an optical illusion, but that's the way it seemed when he played basketball.
Yeah.
And there are these people that come along and do these things. Musicians. There are musicians that do it too. Jimi Hendrix.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix. Very few people have touched a guitar like fucking Jimi Hendrix. And there are guys that are out there. There are guitarists out there who do amazing things. Clapton, Eddie Van Halen, Joe Satriani, amazing guitarist. You know, there's songwriters, poets, writers. Stephen King. I'll bet you if you sat down and you talked to fucking Stephen King, he'd tell you, I don't know where most of this shit comes from. But it to me, this is where stuff like this makes sense.
Yeah,
there is nothing new under the sun. You know, these things are all there. Like you look at like a story, like a novel. All these things are there. The words are all there. You just put them together. That's all it was. And when you look at it like that, it's kind of eye-opening in a way. It's like, oh, yeah, you just kind of put some fucking words together into a story. It was always just right there. Like that story was always just right there. Those string of words all together, all becoming this one thing. It was always right there. He just happened to put it all together.
Well, and I think of there's so many times when we get good ideas, but for whatever reason we don't act on those ideas, and then a year or so goes down the road, and you see that product. Have you ever had that happen? You'd be like, I wanted that.
Oh yeah, I wanted that. I think so many people have had that happen where they think of something and then later on they see like an infomercial for it or some shit, and somebody's made like millions of dollars off the fucking thing. Oh yeah, hell yeah,
yeah.
Or somebody starts like a business, and you'll be like, oh, I had that idea like years ago and I just never acted on it, and then they're very, very successful at it. And maybe at that point you tapped into something. If you just acted on it in that moment, you could have been right there, but I think a lot of people do. They tap into it a little bit and then they just never act on anything. They just continue on with their life. Some people, maybe like you were saying, maybe they just get a great idea that one moment, they just take the great idea and then never dip their toes back in.
So I do think that there is a little bit, all kinds of great ideas are out there, but there is a bit of something to taking that great idea and making it happen, developing it into a new thing.
Oh, making it reality.
Making it into a reality. Exactly.
Well, that's the magic. I think that's the magic of the whole thing, is taking something that was in your head, something that you wanted to do, something that you wanted to create, and putting it out there or making it. Like, I can tell you for a fact that I sat on the idea for the Freudian slip for a while. I wanted to do a podcast for years. I actually looked into, long before there was podcasting, there was internet radio. And I looked into actually figuring out a way to broadcast so that I could do my own type of podcasting at home at the time, because it wasn't up to where it is now. The ease of it. I'm talking back in like 2004 or 5. That I was looking into this, and excuse me, and a little before that. But it was just crazy time. You couldn't do it like you can now. So I just kind of sat on it and I didn't do anything. And I had always wanted to, and I just kept listening to podcasts and going, all these different ones. And I'd like to do that. And then eventually it came down the pipe. I met a few people that knew a few things and said, oh, well, if you do this, you do this, you do this, you can set something up. So I started doing something with my webcam mic. And I started putting that together for the original show. The original show was done on my webcam mic. And then I switched to what I have now, which is the Yeti, which, as you know now, Holly, is a very nice piece of equipment. But but those earlier shows, like this was something that I created.
Mhm.
It took me time. Like I sat and thought about it for a really long time, what I wanted to do and what, the ideas of what I wanted to create. And I wanted to be able to talk about these types of subjects and I want to be able to talk about whatever the fuck I wanted to be able to talk about, really. And it's just that these things happen to be some of the things that I like to talk about. And it took me a long time to get to the point where I was able to create it, where I was actually able to see the fruition of it, But, in some ways you could say that it was always there. Like the idea of me doing a radio show was always there. I could take you back to, let's go back, Holly, to 1984. Circa 1984, Buxton, Maine. A little bedroom, young little boy, 8-year-old little Christopher York, recording tapes of himself as a DJ for the radio. 8 years old. So, I mean, these things, you could say that the inception of this whole thing that I'm doing right now, it's been around for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It was something I was creating in my head for a long time. And in retrospect, like I got talking with some people like Matt and a few other people that I know. Like I think back now, it's like, fuck, when I was going to go to college, which I did not go to college, by the way, I was supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
I was accepted.
Right.
Had my dorm assignment.
Oh boy.
Didn't go. We won't go into that, but my major was going to be in English. And I was going to be an English major with a secondary in education, the minor in education. And I think back now, and I'm like, God, you were such a fucking idiot. Like, you were such a fucking idiot for not going. Excuse me. But you're such a fucking idiot. Like, you're the thing you wanted to do was always right in front of you, and you just fucking didn't even see it. Like you're a blabbermouth. You love talking, and I never saw it at the time. I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to be like, I want to write and I want to be an English teacher. That's what I want to do. No, I don't. But I didn't see it at the time. Like I couldn't see the fucking forest for the trees. So, but like I said, if you look back, like the inception of it, I was always creating this thing. It was always there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so in a way, I was always dipping into that pool, trying to find that creative thing that I needed to do, and it wound up being this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which I have fucking so much fun with. Like I enjoy doing it, like regardless of how it's received or whatever. By the way, like regardless of that, I enjoy doing it. Like I enjoy kicking back, talking to you, or the guys on Sunday night and what we do there. It just gives me that outlet to be able to say things about these different things that we talk about. Like, and the thing that I like about doing this with you is you keep me on my toes because you're always like throwing me curveballs about what we're going to talk about. Like, so then I have to think about like, oh, like we're going to talk about this week. So then I have to be like, all right, well, this is my take on this.
Right.
And this is how I feel about it. It just, and sometimes we differ on opinion too.
Absolutely.
So, but that's one of the things that is also as good is that you and I are adults. Unlike some people, you and I are adults that can go, okay, we have a differing of opinion, but that's okay. Matt and I have that ability, which is amazing. Because we have such varying degrees of beliefs, Matt and I. And sometimes I have to just let shit go. There was one day I sent him a joke, some type of a joke, and it offended him.
Oh.
And I was like, whoa. Oh, I never expected that. Like, it was just like I sent him a YouTube video, and like the response from him, I was like, wow. And I didn't realize it. It just took me a minute to go, oh, dude, your sense of humor is fucking dark. Most of the time, Matt gets your sense of humor, but you're a dark son of a bitch. Like, so you have to take that into account, you know, when you're dealing with other people.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're able to have these differing opinions and still be fucking friends at the end of the day, which is so nice, you know, not be like, I fucking hate you.
Yeah. Well, I think at a point, it's important to remember we're all having our own unique experiences here. And in some ways, it's kind of like, you know, we are tapping in and peering into that collective consciousness. But another way to think about it is that collective consciousness peering out of each individual one of us.
Yeah.
Experiencing it through. These are like fractals of experience. So
well, I think if people take a step back and try to look at life through other people's eyes, you know, I know that's hard to do. Believe me. That piece of shit person that you're behind at the fucking grocery store that's really fucking making your life a living hell that day. Hey, I get it. Okay? I get it.
You mean the one that sneezed on you?
Whoever. Whichever fucking one, you know. I get it. But take a minute to understand that everybody is having their own unique experience. And we're all, you know, fuck, I can't think of his name right now, the comedian, Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks has a great thing where he says, you know, we are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. And it's such a fucking, such a powerful statement. Like that we're all one being, but we're just experiencing our own little thing. And it's, if you break down that at its core, there's so much universal truth to that. I love that man as a comedian. He was fucking brilliant. And I mean, I go back to that all the time. I go back to shit he said all the time. Fucking buy the ticket, take the ride. Take the fucking ride. You bought the fucking ticket. You're here. Take the fucking ride. I think that's what I told you. I think I told you that was my advice to your daughter when she graduated high school. You bought the fucking ticket. Take the fucking ride. You know, it's your life. You know, and I think too often we shelter ourselves from opening ourselves up to these things, like these universal truths, these things that are out there, these ideas, this creativity, whatever the fuck it may be, these things that scare you. You know, we hide behind, oh, I gotta live in my fucking rat lifestyle, my little maze. Here I gotta go get the cheese. Go get the cheese, go back. Go get the cheese, go back. Go get the cheese, go back. Yeah. It's a fucking rat race. That we forget that there's all this other shit that's going on in the world.
Yeah, we seem sometimes human beings tend to forget the potentials that are here and then start limiting themselves and only thinking about certain constraints, and whether they be money or responsibilities. And I think some of the most...
listen, and being responsible, I'm not saying that you should just fucking shirk your responsibilities and just fucking throw it all out the window.
I'm not saying
that's not
that
what
either.
I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that it's a rat race. And you need to find a respite from that, or you need to find a way to get around that and stop living that. Because perspective's a beautiful thing. You know, you can be sitting in a pile of shit and imagine that you're playing with Play-Doh. You know what I mean? Like the optimism, pessimism bullshit. Like the perspective is a wonderful thing if you can utilize it in your life.
Yes. And living your life for you.
Oh yeah.
In having a, there's so much potential here. Another kind of manifestation of the Akashic Records, I think, worth mentioning, and I think you've talked about it on the other show, is Nitrous Damas and kind of this idea
of prophetic
stuff coming through, different
seeing things.
And I think he's the first one that really comes to mind, although I think Edgar Cayce is kind of reputed of doing that, and I think there's some modern day people who
I don't know if this is an instance where I actually did that. I know when I was in high school, I took the day off of school one day, like played hooky. I did that. I did that a lot. Surprise. And I had a dream that night before that a kid that I went to school with came to the house.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, that day he came to the fucking house.
Mm-hmm.
He was Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, hey,
I literally, it was one of those times where I dreamt it that night.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting there at the table, like eating a bowl of cereal or something, in like shorts, and that's it, like no shirt, nothing. And he comes walking up to the fucking door in a suit and tie. I'm like, hey, Bill. I mean, I didn't say anything to him about the fucking dream or anything. I didn't, God, I wouldn't have even prolonged that conversation for any more than I had to, for fuck's sake.
Mm-hmm.
I just, I had an aversion to the whole Jehovah's Witness because he had tried to like rope me in at one point when I was younger,
mm-hmm.
when we were in school together. And I'd always liked Bill as a person, but the religion just kind of got in the way, I think, for him and I, which was too bad. It was too bad.
Yeah.
He was into a lot of cool shit.
So
like science fiction.
Yeah, so it seems like what you had kind of did was at a moment, like, in through your dream, access the potential future moment that happened to happen through different choices.
Mm-hmm.
And that's similar to what it seems like what maybe Nostradamus was doing, was through his like scryings. It sounds like he did scrying into some kind of glass or something, and he tapped into that kind of collective consciousness, which, he could describe future possibilities, which he outlined as predictions.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, a lot of this kind of people who present their work as prophetic are actually what they're doing. They are kind of tapping into this collective consciousness of possibilities and potentials, which may or may not come true. And I think when you get that information, you have to kind of assess it with that kind of lens, that it's a possibility and a potential, but not a definite.
Right.
Although in retrospect, his stuff is kind of interesting to read through, but it's kind of vague and and
very
some of it's really nonsensical.
I picked up one of the books of his predictions or quatrains or whatever the fuck you want to call it, from the library when I was at Bonnie Eagle High School at one point, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, I guess, but really, I mean, it just, to me, it just seems, but yeah, I would definitely say that those type of people, if in fact they are, do dip into that pool. Absolutely. People who are diviners. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that there is a big thing to get an Akashic Record reading out there. And I would say that I think everyone has that potential. So, I don't know that there's really much value in paying someone else to dip in. But I think if there are some people who can just, maybe they have their connection is better. Maybe it's a thing. I think it's your own personal experience and exploring and experiencing thing. If you want to go down that path, that's totally fine. I think though that there is that potential for, as much as anyone else can do that for you, you can do it for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people could definitely open themselves up more to stuff like this if they wanted to. But you just have to be willing to. Like most people aren't willing to sit around and meditate. To take the time and meditate, which we've heard from many sources now is healthy. It's a good thing for you to do for your mental health, even for your physical health. But people aren't doing it. In droves. But they could take the time, sit down, breathe, clear their fucking head, take fucking 20, 30 minutes a day. Breathe, clear your fucking head, go for a fucking walk and do it. Just be quiet, let shit go. We all know it would be a good thing to do, but do we do it? No. It's the same thing with being healthy.
Well, and maybe even following those great ideas or your path of your joy. And, most people are in their, stuck in their responsibilities and kind of, self-misery of, oh, I have to go do this job that I don't really like.
Yeah.
And then when I have my free time, I'm going to, blow off steam and do whatever that thing is. And maybe at that point they can tap into this kind of collective consciousness and or maybe they're just going to spend their time having some fun. It's kind of a personal choice, a personal experience. Your experience is your experience.
Yeah, your life is your life. And I mean, it's you're gonna live it the way you're gonna live it. I'm not the person that's gonna sit here and try to tell people how to live their life. I'll give you, for instance, my father had a heart attack a few years back, and of course, after his heart attack, the doctors, everybody, they all want you to friggin', change your diet and, whatnot. And of course, he's fucking diabetic too. So they get in that, and that got worse because he wasn't taking care of that. And, and he had all these freaking problems. And I sat down in front of him and I said, Dad, listen. Because he was bitching and moaning about, having to fucking change everything. I said, I'm gonna tell you right now, if something happened to me tomorrow and the doctors looked at me and said, Chris, you gotta stop smoking weed, you gotta stop doing all these things that you like doing, I'd be like, fuck you. Fuck you. You ain't gonna fucking tell me what to do. This is my life. I said, but you get a choice. You can live your life that way. I said, and I'm not gonna fault you for it, Dad. I won't. It's your life. If you choose to live your life, who the fuck am I to tell you different? I said, but that's your choice. Like you gotta make that choice. You gotta choose. Do you want to say fuck it and throw caution to the wind, or do you want to rein it in a little bit and try to savor the time that you got left? And that's your choice completely. And I will not fault you either fucking way. And I want you to understand that. As your son, I'd like you to, live, a little more smart. But if you want to just live your life the way you want to, I'm not going to tell you any fucking different. Because I can't. Because I wouldn't want anybody to tell me any different. It's you have it when it comes to these types of things, you got to want it. If you want to change, if you want to do different things, if you want to tap into different things, you got to want it. if you want these things, I'd say like people like Holly. Holly wants her spiritual development. She's the type of person that wants it. She reaches for it. She goes for it. She doesn't just sit back idly and wait for somebody to drop spirituality into her lap. That's not Holly. So like if you want these types of things, if you want to dip into this, and I wouldn't even say if you want this type of thing, you're not dipping in. You got to go in. You got to at least be a tourist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think for me, it's even just not this desire to live a full life.
Well, yeah.
It's not even in terms of being spiritual or not. It's just
it's understanding life.
It's living my life.
Yeah.
As my life.
Right.
Not the life my parents want for me or the
no, it's the life
what
you want for you.
The life that I want for me. And that's what I would encourage anyone to do is.
And I think anybody that dips into this stuff, Holly, and I think you would back me up on this, anybody that dips their toe into this will find that path that feels right for them in life. And it doesn't have to be like you and I aren't like, you have to go shaman.
No. And in fact, unless you really feel called for that path, if you were just doing that, that will shake any kind of like preconceptions of this is if this is right for you or not.
But that's not what this show, like what you and I are trying to say. We're not trying to say to anybody, you need to go a certain way.
Absolutely not.
No.
It's more of these are options. This is something that we've been exploring that we find exciting and interesting, and kind of find that thing that like lights a spark in you. Maybe it's rock sculptures and like stacking piles of rocks. That's not going to how I'm not going to spend my time. But if that is what lights your creative genius up and you can make these beautiful sculptures, then I think you should do that.
Hey, people can do some amazing things with hot glue and rocks. I can tell you that.
One of the things that we know that you love, you're creating your show and just having these conversations. This is one of those things that sparks Chris's joy, and having a forum where people can have different opinions and experiences and just express them and be accepted, which is something that's important to me as well. Like saying these ideas and saying these things out loud. And we haven't had a good disagreement in a while, but trust me, we disagree on things.
Oh yes, we do.
And but one of these things that is important is to be able to have these different points of view and disagree and bring these experiences there and say, okay, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
And just keep going on your own way.
Well, at least come to terms with each other about it.
Yeah.
I think there was one night that Matt and I had this really long conversation about shit, and we went all around the fucking barn. Holy shit, dude. I think we covered just about everything there was to cover. And at the end of it, Matt was just like, dude, I just want to like congratulate us. And like at first I was like, for what? And he's like, for still being friends. And I was like, oh, yeah, no, definitely, yeah. Because too often people take that, oh, well, we have a differing opinion, so now we can't any longer be friends. Like, fuck that shit. Yeah. Like, just let's figure out where the difference lies, and then, you don't have to agree with me. I don't have to agree with you. I mean, unless you're like a serial killer. Like, and I've got to be like, hey, how do you rationalize killing all those people? And I'm not, and that's not the discussion we're having. Or a serial rapist or whatever the fucking case may be. But I mean, at least people can have those discussions and not separate and not go their separate ways. Still be able to have a decent, productive argument. And it doesn't even have to be an argument. It can be just a discussion. But yeah, for the record, Holly and I do not agree on everything. It might come as a surprise to you all. No, I think people could figure that out just based on our general demeanor about how we look at things. That there are certain places where we don't exactly see eye to eye. But again, that's fine because we both understand each other when it comes to those subjects. So I don't see that as a problem.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that's just an important point in general, and it also ties into our topic is that the Akashic kind of is this record of our experiences. So it is important. There is so much of this record of human beings not respecting each other's points of view and their perspectives and their experiences. To me, it's important that we have this imprint, this experience of. And acknowledge that, we can do this. And one thing that, to bring up something that we don't get along, or not necessarily we don't get along, but we don't agree on, is this kind of, topic of mediumship and channeling spiritual energy at times. I don't know if I would say I'm more woo, but I've definitely had some very positive experiences with mediums. This idea of communicating with the dead or with spirits. Chris, his point of view is that is, well, I'm not going to say your point of view.
I don't see it as, what's the word I'm looking for? Reliable. I've had experiences, which I can say are very quote unquote woo, or down that road, but I do not see it as a reliable. I do not see going to a psychic or medium and having them tell me anything as reliable. I just don't. I've seen too much bullshit. I've also, because of my own personal experiences, and I understand how it all works. Do you know what I mean? When it comes to that, because I've had experiences that the bullshit doesn't fly with me. So it's a weird line I walk.
Right.
But it is definitely, we do definitely differ there. It's not as much as you think.
Right.
It's one of those. It's not as much as you think, but it's definitely different.
Right. Well, until you really talk about it and clarify it, you just don't know. And
yes and no. Yes and no. It's such a weird place. It's such a weird place. But anyway, I gotta wrap up because I gotta get some stuff done. And we had a late start here today because.
Hi, Frank. You just got here. And
hi, Frank. Hope everything's going well over in Ireland, Bob. Hope you guys are managing through this whole fucking thing. Fine and dandy. I know I talked to a couple of the people that are in the UK that that have been dealing with all this. Shelley Robinson, which I meant to, and I got to remind myself tomorrow night on the show. She's now subscribed to the show on Anchor. She's donating money monthly to the show.
Oh, that's really nice.
And I reached out to her. I was like, Shelley, darling, you did not have to do that at all. And she was like, oh no, I wanted to for a long time. So I wanted to shout out to Shelley and let her know that I really, really appreciate that. And I will do that tomorrow on the show as well. Hope everybody's doing well through this. Lovely well, it's not even stay at home. You can still go out and shit, but just this, whatever this fucking shit is. This has been Slip Into the Night, episode 29. Spinning the Akashic Record hits. Hope you enjoyed this little ditty. This is Holly's idea. I actually like this topic.
You had a lot to say.
Yeah, I like this topic. That's why I was glad that you picked it. Because, like I said, you keep me honest because you throw me curveballs. You throw me shit that I don't think about regularly.
I felt a little challenged to get a word in edgewise.
Sorry. Sometimes I get, like I said, I'm a blabbermouth. I even said I was a blabbermouth today on the show.
Yeah, you got very passionate about this. I didn't expect that.
If you gotta say something, fucking just be like, hey, shut your fucking mouth, asshole.
I'm still getting my comfort zone at, launching cuss words at you.
Oh, you're good. You're good. You're good. But yeah, we'll have to revisit it again then. Maybe we'll need to do an Akashic Records part 2.
TBD.
All right, everybody. Hey, be safe out there and take care of one another. And we will see you next week. And I will see some of you tomorrow night. Bye-bye, everybody.